Hello and welcome to Kings at Home Daily this Friday morning. Nearly through another week. Hope you're well and flourishing through these restricting times. My name's Goff and it's my privilege this morning to take us through the next few verses. We're going through the book of Acts. We're at chapter 16, verse 11. Just to give you the background, Paul and Silas are on their missionary journey. The gospel is now breaking out from Jewish territory into the Gentile world, and there's just been that Macedonian call. While Paul and Silas were trying to go this way, they couldn't go the way they were thinking of going, and then the Macedonian call, come over and help us, and so that's what they did. So reading from verse 11. From Troas, we put out to sea and sailed straight for Samothrace. I probably pronounced that terribly. An island in the northern Aegean. And the next day we went on to Neapolis. From there we travelled to Philippi, a Roman colony, and the leading city of that district of Macedonia. And we stayed there several days. On the Sabbath, we went outside the city gate to the river where we expected to find a place of prayer. We sat down and began to speak to the women who had gathered there. And one of those listening was a woman from the city of Thyatira named Lydia, a dealer in purple cloth. She was a worshipper of God. The Lord opened her heart to respond to Paul's message. And when she and the members of her household were baptized, she invited us into her home. If you consider me a believer in the Lord, she said, come and stay at my house. And she persuaded us. A beautiful story about the beginning, really, of the Christian mission in Europe. And it begins with one dear lady, Lydia, whose heart the Lord opened. Something special there, isn't there? This personal engagement, connection that she discovered, and that you and I are able to enjoy by God's grace. And it raises the whole question of hearing God's voice and responding to His voice. And so I want to speak a little bit this morning about hearing God's voice. It's a subject that Christians can sometimes get quite uptight about and anxious about. Not really know, can I hear God? And there are times when we all feel a bit like that. But I want to assure us this morning that we can hear God, and it's a beautiful thing. So here's this dear lady. By the way, thinking of the of Philippi, there probably wasn't a synagogue there. Because there would need to be 10 men to form the nucleus of a synagogue. So Paul went outside the city by the river. That's where synagogues would often be, especially in Gentile towns and cities. The synagogue would be just outside the city by the river for purification and washing and so on. So they went there and found these women, a place of prayer. She was a worshipper of God. This dear lady, she had a heart after God. She was, I guess you would say, she was an inquirer. She had a heart after God. And as Paul shared the gospel, it says that the Lord opened her heart to respond to Paul's message. It's beautiful, isn't that beautiful? There was a personal interaction. That's where the Christian life begins, a personal interaction. She opened her heart. Suddenly, it's that personal awareness that I need the Lord. I'm unworthy. I really don't deserve Him, and yet He loves me. Jesus died for me, and it's that personal awareness, individual interaction with the Lord. That's where the Christian life begins, and that's where it continues. And I was reminded of the two disciples on their way to road to Emmaus. Do you remember back at the end of Luke's Gospel? And Jesus came up alongside them. They didn't recognize Him, and he began to explain. He began to explain Jesus in the Scriptures. And you remember they later reflected, didn't our hearts burn within us? Again, that personal connection with Jesus. And interestingly, when those disciples got to to where they were traveling to, Jesus made it says something like he made as if to move on, and they prevailed upon him to stay in their home, and that's where they recognized it. Through breaking bread they recognized who it was. It's the same word here. This dear lady prevails on on Paul and his colleagues to come into their home. She prevailed on them, and that was to lead to the founding of the first church there in Philippi, a church that was going to be special to Paul throughout his life. They supported him through thick and thin, and if you read in Philippians chapter 1, he took great joy in that little church, that formative church. So hearing God, I wonder if you hear God's voice, whether you are aware that you hear God's voice. If you were watching Kings at Home Daily last Tuesday, I think it was Tuesday, Steve was speaking. And in the chat channel, Eden had just said, "Oh, Goff, I really like that quote you mentioned in Knowing God, the end of chapter 3. You know the quote, you've all heard me say it, not so much that I know God, but he knows me. I'm engraved on the palms of his hand." And I just replied on the chat channel, "Great, so glad you enjoy it." And as I finished saying that, Steve happened to read it out. And it was kind of a whoa moment, a sense of, God, you're speaking to us. And you could write that off as being, oh, it's coincidence. No. If you start from that stance of excusing things, no, that's not God. That's kind of you're going to have an unbelieving heart. But if you start from the perspective that actually you have been made for an ongoing conversational relationship with the Lord, then you'll be seeing so many things that are significant in your life because the Lord is leading you. So do be careful of a cynical heart that can rob you of that knowledge of what the Lord is saying to you, because it's beautiful. It's a heart thing. Knowing the Lord, it's not just with our minds, it's with our hearts. And so when we open the Bibles, Lord, I want you to speak to me today. Please speak to me. I want my heart to be open, not cynical, but open. And that's why we want to regularly be reading the Word, to let it come alive as the Lord speaks to us, so that our hearts burn as we do so. And to that end, I want to encourage you with another book. It's called Hearing God by Dallas Willard. And so it's quite thin. Dallas Willard he's kind of I was going to say a guru when it comes to Christian discipleship. The words all sound wrong there, but he's great on Christian discipleship. And let me read a few verses from this little book. This is the opening. Hearing God, a daring idea, some would say, presumptuous, even dangerous. But what if we're made for it? What if the human system simply will not function properly without it? Is it not, in fact, more presumptuous and dangerous to undertake human existence without hearing God? It goes on. God has created us for intimate friendship with him, both now and forever. This is the Christian viewpoint, and it's made clear throughout the Bible. It's great. One more quote. My time is nearly gone. Where is it? Here we go. Only communion with God provides the appropriate context for communications between us and him. So I want to encourage you in your walk with the Lord. If you don't spend time with him, if you don't commune with him on a regular basis, if you don't open the Bible with that on a regular basis with that sense of, Lord, I want to hear your voice, then don't be surprised if you can't hear his voice. But how precious it is when we come to him with an open heart, a heart that's inquiring and looking and waiting and asking him, Lord, I want to hear your voice today. Please speak to me. It's what you were made for. And like Lydia and like those disciples on the road to Emmaus, your heart can be opened, your heart can burn, your heart can be thrilled at what the Lord wants to say to you. So bless you. Have a good day. As you go into this weekend, may you know the presence of the Lord as you commune with him, and may you learn to hear his voice. God bless you, and see you again before too long.